Well, today's show is an interview, and this is the show that I planned to release a few weeks ago on March 15th, which ended up being the same weekend that all the COVID-19 stuff really started to heat up and hit the fan here in the US. And this conversation just ended up feeling so irrelevant and just, unimportant at the time. So I postponed the release. And with that said, I think it's a really entertaining conversation. And hey, my hope is that it's a good distraction away from everything else that's going on right now. And it just seems like a much better time to release it. But before I do, I just wanted to throw in this one caveat that it was recorded in the, in the pre-COVID-19 world, or when COVID-19 was a much more distant problem. There's nothing in this conversation that pertains to the disease, but it just seems right to acknowledge that this was a conversation recorded when the world was in very different circumstances. And I hope you're all thriving out there. I hope you're staying alive and washing your hands like crazy. And I hope that you enjoy today's show. I'm your host, Daniel Powell, and welcome to the Grounded Presence Podcast, where together we explore authentic identity, deep community, and pursue a deeper connection to this world that we live in. And oh yeah, if that describes you, then you are in the right place. So it's been a while now, but the show is back and I've got big plans for the rest of the year, and I'm not going to go into too much detail with that now, but I will say this: if you're someone who longs to be more deeply connected in your daily life with the world around you, you're going to dig what's coming down the pipe in the future of the show. But as for this week, it's a conversation with my buddy Jonathan. I love my buddy Jonathan. He was in town a few weeks ago and he was showing me this new tattoo that he has on his forearm. And it was actually the first tattoo he's ever gotten, and he's in his early 30s. But we started talking about tattooing and what the experience of getting his first tattoo meant to him. And it's just a conversation that took some really fascinating directions. So I said, hey man, let's get some mics and hit record on this, because this is good stuff. And wow, I mean, we got into some really interesting territory. And, we talked about what the prevalence of tattoos might represent in culture when we look at it through a more anthropological and subconscious lens. We just get into all sorts of stuff. We get into initiation rites and masculine archetypes, and I just think we tapped into some really profound stuff. Jonathan's a little tired in this conversation because I kept him up a bit later than he would have liked to record this conversation, but he hung in there like a champ, and I think you're going to be so very glad that he did. So here's me and Jonathan Bigelow chopping it up about tattoos.
Tattoos, man.
Tattoos. You and I earlier were just having this conversation about tattoos, and it took a really interesting direction. So let me see that tattoo again.
Yeah, no.
So you got some writing on your forearm there. It's some Chinese characters. Chinese, is that what it is?
Yeah, kanji. It's kanji. I guess that's a technical name for Chinese characters, for the Chinese alphabet. I think it also applies to Japanese, though. I think Japanese and Chinese, I don't know, the Chinese characters fall under, but also seems like maybe Japanese characters also fall under that. But this is definitely Chinese, so anyway.
Obviously, you're not Chinese.
I'm not Chinese.
This is something we didn't talk about earlier, so I'm intrigued. But, so you have Chinese script on your arm.
Yeah.
Why'd you choose Chinese?
Well, that's a good question. I had this book. I have this book. It's by Mirabai Bush, and she's...
Who is that?
So Mirabai Bush is...
Tamira?
Mirabai Bush. Yeah, I actually first encountered her on an On Being podcast episode with Krista Tippett, and she was talking about mindfulness and a lot of other things, but I was like, this lady seems like somebody that I'd like to learn more from, and so I went and got one of her books on meditation and mindfulness and higher education because that kind of intrigued me. But I found this character in the 5th chapter of that book, and it's the compound character for mindfulness. But when you break it down, it seems like the Chinese don't differentiate between mind and heart. They use the same character for that. And then the same character seems to be used for now and today. So it's literally mind, heart, today, or mind, heart, now. And I need reminders because I'm not great at self-discipline. So I thought, I'll put that character on my arm. I thought it looked a little bit more interesting than just getting text that said mindfulness and compassion and awareness. I thought.
Well, I can see why. So that was in the book.
Yeah, the characters in the book, and I think also I really like the idea of sort of giving a nod to the East, putting a Chinese character on my arm because it sort of ties back to the idea that this idea seems to, at least from what we can tell, seems to have originated in the East, and is definitely much more clearly spelled out in Eastern traditions. So yeah, those are some of the reasons why I chose a Chinese character instead.
That's really cool. I mean, I can see why you're drawn to it because that blurring of mind and heart, that's like a really clear distinction in the language we use, So if there's something that blends those two together, that's really appealing and that's really unique.
Yeah, I like how the Chinese sort of get away from some of the dualism even in their language. It's like they don't have a difference for the word crisis and opportunity. They're the same word. I think that's fascinating, because crisis has such an urgent and immediate and almost, frantic overtone to it. And opportunity is kind of completely different, it's...
Okay, so that's the linguistic side of things.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, we're getting a little far
I think
afield.
you see somebody with Chinese lettering on there. This is kind of funny. Like sitting here, you kind of got your long hair and a little bit of a man bun. So
I know. Maybe that's the samurai vibe. I don't know.
If somebody says to me, they're like, "Okay, describe Jonathan right now." Well, he's got his hair in a little bit of a man bun, and he's got like some Chinese script on his arm. I'm probably gonna make some unfair judgments about that person, but I know you, and like I'm getting the story, and you're just not that guy that I would make these associations with.
It's great.
If that makes
I love it.
I don't know if that means anything to you, but
Worthy of being judged. This is fantastic. No, it's actually... I think that's like kind of wraps us kind of back around to, what we were talking about earlier, because it's like...
Well, before we go there...
Yeah, okay.
I also want you to set out this is the only tattoo you have, right?
Yeah, so far.
Okay.
I've got 2 more planned.
And you got it really recently.
I did, about 2 months ago.
So this is a super fresh experience.
Yeah.
And you're sharing with me about how the circumstances when you finally made the decision and you're in the tattoo parlor, like waiting to get your tattoo.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I had a tattoo that I was actually thinking about getting for about 4 years, and this isn't the one that I got. It was a different idea, but I always shied away from getting tattoos because I was just afraid of the stigma that kind of goes along with them. And I think that's kind of... It seems like that stigma is sort of starting to dissolve, and doesn't really seem like it carries as much weight with the younger generations. But it definitely feels like there is some taboo connected to having tattoos in our culture even still. So yeah, it was sort of coming at it with those fears, but also doing some personal work with the whole idea of willingness. That willingness for me is being willing to show up and have whatever experience comes up, whatever emotions come up surrounding an experience, without avoiding or, turning away or resisting those emotions, but also making choices out of, values that I've determined, things that I value, or maybe categories that I've said, okay, this is, a place that I want to live out of in the moment. So for me, I think like one of my values is vulnerability. And so I'm here, having this whole, deliberation where I'm getting ready to walk out of this tattoo parlor, and I've got the artist and he's put the ink on my arm, for the stencil. And he's like, all right, he's like, you just need to think about this, for about 15 minutes, and just kind of look at it in the mirror and, come to terms with this, and decide if you actually really want this or not. And so, I'm pacing around this parlor, and he's out of the room, and I'm looking at it in the mirror, and, and I just come to the realization that, this thing's going to be on my body for the rest of my life unless I get it removed, which is going to be a pain, or, my arm gets cut off, which hopefully that doesn't happen because I kind of like my arm, especially with the tattoo on it now. But, yeah, so I was realizing, it's like, okay, so I can either have this or I won't. And that kind of seems like that's how it is with, anything in life. The ironic thing is that, this tattoo is about mindfulness, and so I'm using mindfulness to navigate the situation, and then willingness, where I'm like, okay, am I going to be present to these emotions? Am I going to, have all this anxiety and this fear of trying to manage everybody else's impressions of me? And
I couldn't handle that. We've been talking a lot this weekend about how much trouble I have with making decisions.
Yeah.
So if somebody gives me another decision to make about the decision I've already made,
yeah,
I think I'm just going to lose it.
I know.
I've already put so much energy into this decision. Don't give me another decision, man.
So wild, and I think for me, it was like, well, yeah, I'm willing to have these emotions. It's like, okay, well, I value vulnerability. I really like beauty. Mindfulness is something that I want to be a part of my life. And I need reminders. I'm kind of a visual person, whatever that means. I think visual symbology definitely impacts me more profoundly, at least on a conscious level. And so it's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna have this. And so, I sat there and I got this tattoo, and it was painful and incredibly uncomfortable. And just kind of leaned into the experience. And I've had a lot of regrets in my life. I've done a lot of things that I've regretted, and I've had no regrets around this tattoo. It's like, oh, this is something that I'm happy that I did, and I like the way it looks, and I like what it reminds me of, and I like the fact that the part of me that seems to be so scared of what everybody else thinks has really started to kind of quiet down. And and just getting in touch with my values, kind of, figuring out, well, what's Jonathan going to be about? What's this Jonathan story going to be about? And what do I want to write, for Jonathan's story for however much time he's got left on this planet? And yeah, it's interesting how, little steps kind of get you to move in certain directions, and tattooing seemed to be one of those things for me. So,
I know you're somebody who doesn't do a lot of things lightly.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, you didn't just go out and get wasted and get a tattoo, and you're like, yes, cool. I like colors. I figured I'd put some colors on my body. So, yeah, and this thing came to mind that I read that Richard Rohr had written in one of his daily meditation emails, just, whatever daily insight emails that he sends out. But this particular email pulled and paraphrased some of his work from the book, what I think it's called, Adam's Return. We'll see here. What's that called? Adam's Return, The 5 Promises of Male Initiation. But I know you're somebody who appreciates the kind of psychological and archetypal symbological side of life. So I this email's been sitting in my inbox for a year and a half, and I was just like, ooh, I remember there was something there. I didn't even remember what exactly it said.
Yeah.
But there is some relationship between tattoo and like scarification that occurs in more ancient initiation rites. So I was like, I'm going to get Jonathan to read this and see what he thinks. So you read it and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah, no, it was really good.
But, man, I guess I'm just going to read the last paragraph here.
Yeah, go for it.
So there's a lot of good stuff in there. And let's see here. So it's based, Richard Rohr is based out of Christianity, but he's got a lot of really cool insights that transcend that framework. So I really appreciate him for that. But he makes, allusions to Christian metaphors in here. So, but here we go. We are not just spiritually named. Historically, many people were marked on their body too, like Jacob being wounded on his hip by the angel, or St. Francis bearing the stigma of the wounds of Christ. Being wounded and surviving helps us understand the pattern of life, death, resurrection. We are no longer simply victims, but empowered and wise healers. No wonder the image of the risen Christ is still wounded. I wonder if the prevalence of hazing tattoos and body piercings is a secular substitution for what young men once sought by fasting, circumcision, scarification, shaving of heads, and knocking out of teeth. True initiation marks you indelibly and gives you your sacred name, but only when it is accompanied by an interior sacred wounding that reminds you that life is hard and that you are indeed wounded and powerless before the mystery of full life.
I really like that last line. True initiation marks you indelibly and gives you your sacred name, but only when it is accompanied by an interior sacred wounding that reminds you that life is hard and that you are indeed wounded and powerless before the mystery of full life. In like a weird way, I feel like tattooing was part of that for me. Definitely resonated with this essay. I think, there's something that he talks about in the first paragraph of the essay is like, life and grace seem to move us along, often without our notice, towards greater maturity, inclusivity, and non-dual wisdom. But at certain points along the way, humans are prone to getting stuck unless we have some kind of initiatory experience. Healing rites a passage, and the aid of some guides or elders. I think I found that, those aids in books, but, it's also about having the experience. And, yeah, I think that's definitely been part of it for me. But, we were talking about tattoos and how...
I think something else important to go into, that he states in that essay, as you called it, is that he notes the lack of like formal initiation rites in our modern culture, and I was thinking about that. Like, I think the closest thing that you can probably consider a rite of passage, an initiation rite, is like going off to college.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And isn't that interesting that that's such like it's not a guided experience. You kind of decide like who you want to be, and then you're just like shipped off to college to fend for yourself. And I don't know, it just seems like there's no like return.
Yeah.
It's an interesting tradition. But that's the best I could come up with.
Yeah, for initiation, right?
Yeah. And there's really nothing else that's like formal, like when you're kind of in between being a child and being an adult. We don't have anything that really marks that you truly are an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's more so like going off to college, you're not a child anymore. And you have a larger degree of autonomy.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think I agree with that. It's also interesting to think about like how, the military seems to have, these rites of passage. They've got like boot camp, or basic training, and just like seeing people who have gone through, those rites of passage and how they do seem to really change the people, you know. Um, but yeah, by and large, it doesn't really seem like our culture has rites of passage for adulthood. And I'm not really even convinced that college is a really great rite of passage for a lot of people. They kind of come out the other end and they still seem pretty lost to me. At least that was my experience.
Well, it's like I think a good rite of passage isn't something that tells you who you are, but it shows you that you're wounded and it helps you acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Where like college doesn't do that.
I think college is just wrapped up in consumerism, It's like, oh, we can buy our way into, and like we can spend enough money to fix, something or experience wholeness. And
I think it's just more like a denial of lostness.
yeah, for sure.
It's not like experiencing the lostness and coming to terms with it and then trying to move forward out of that. It's like, who are you? You have to decide now. And then you have to move forward and pretend like you're not lost and pretend like you know what you want to do with the next, 40, 50 years of your life.
Yeah, it's like we can like somehow like learn our way out of the lostness instead of just leaning into it and accepting that, we are wounded and that we are powerless over the mystery of full life, which is kind of what, Richard Rohr gets at the end of that. And I think that's like, for me, experiencing some of that, kind of just stumbling into it, It's like that's been really helpful for me, to just get in touch with the fact that I'm not in control. And
So bringing it back to tattoos.
Yeah.
Those last few lines where he says, I wonder if essentially tattoos of like our way, or this generation's way, your and my generation's way of trying to initiate ourselves, like create a ritual that's in our DNA that isn't fleshed out so much in culture. Does that resonate with you? And
I mean, I think it resonates with me. I think, I think that the way that we do one thing is, the way that we do everything. And so, like, I think the tattooing, became a rite of passage for me of sorts because it brought up, the fact that I'm trying to control other people's, opinions of me and realizing that I have no power to do that. It's an illusion, And then it's like, well, am I going to lean into that? Am I going to have that? Am I going to get in touch with my powerlessness in this area? And then, the tattoo becomes, the marking of that. It's the reminder of that. But it's also that I actually got in touch with that. But there's something powerful about having, getting in touch with something and then, having some sort of like physical change around that. I think that's creates sort of a permanence to the experience. It's interesting to think about like how, there's this idea, going around, that we carry the trauma in our bodies, and it's interesting to think about intentionally inflicting trauma or, wounding our bodies around like some sort of, intention or having an intention around the wounding. The symbology obviously carries intention, I think. Maybe it's not always clearly articulated. And how like that becomes a reminder, and it's probably buried more deeply than we think.
You ever have these moments where like you get a vision for something? Your tattoo is probably this for you, but you get a vision for something and it's just like this. This is catharsis. So at one point, I've been struggling to connect with like my my heart and my identity lately, but I can touch it when I remember this moment. And like my wounding, like that wounding that's mentioned in this essay that I need to be aware of is loneliness, And man, like I can't explain the circumstances that surrounded like this vision, but they were really like special, like, personally like intimate circumstances where I really woke up to myself. but just being exposed more to like rites of passage, way of thinking about things, really touched me. And the vision that I got for myself is, this is going to sound really weird to a lot of people probably, but it's deep in me, that like what I need to do is I need to go into the woods and I need to like brand myself. And that's probably a lot of a bad idea for a lot of reasons, like without knowing anything about like branding, right? But just part of like being marked and like initiating myself, but not because it's like the wilderness that's initiating me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like initiating, I'm going to use that for lack of a better way to put it, but initiating myself in my wound, like marking myself in my wound of loneliness and like reminding myself of my wound of loneliness and fighting through it, like this vision of undergoing a really uncomfortable experience, where I'm going to have to, primally scream. It's coming back to me now. It was, yeah, I'm not going to say it, but that's where I wanted it. I wanted it right there, Yeah, and I'm going to be vague, but all these the images of this experience are coming back to me, like the symbol that I wanted there, and it was just like, very special, in the way of wounding, but in a very powerful way,
That's interesting.
And I was just like, man, if there's anything that's initiation, like that's it. But yeah, on the other hand, don't want to get gangrene, don't want to pass out in the woods, But yeah, man, I lost that, but that just came back to me as we were talking about this and you were talking about yours.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But marking yourself as a reminder of the woundedness of being human.
Yeah, I think it's like surrendering for me. It's surrendering to like the human experience, in a way. It's like, okay, I'll have this, I can keep on fighting it, or I can just, have it and get on with it. And I think that's why I really like the serenity prayer. It's like, God, give me the grace to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that's always really hard. It's like, how do I know what I can and can't change? And I guess that's where intuition comes in. That's where trying to figure out what I can and can't change, and being open to receiving insight to what that is. Yeah, it's interesting.
Something else we started riffing on earlier that before we had this conversation was the location of tattoos, and how like the location of a tattoo just seems to carry a really archetypal energy.
Yeah.
Which like I had never thought of before, but it's like you can feel it when you see these tattoos that are in locations like the tattoo on the back, The back is like the biggest canvas. And I'm thinking of this. This is funny too, because I'm really thinking of this from like a masculine perspective. Because I'm just thinking like, I know a woman who's got a big tattoo on her back that doesn't carry the same energy. But I'm thinking guys.
Yeah.
And that didn't occur to me earlier. But like the tattoo on the back, that's like power. That has like the archetypal energy of a warrior.
Yeah, but it's interesting you're talking about power and you're talking about back tattoos, and I think I've always experienced them as seductive. And I think that like seduction is like a form of feminine power, you know? So it's interesting that, yeah, there's like the feminine and the masculine expression of power, but it still feels kind of powerful. Whether or not it's, you know, the warrior, or I don't know what the counterpart that would be from like a feminine standpoint, but, you know. I think it's also interesting how the back, like thinking about like getting a tattoo on the back or on my back, feels like incredibly vulnerable, and how the back is a vulnerable place, and yet we associate a back tattoo with power.
Well, it's interesting because
You know,
I'm
or a
sitting over
warrior.
here, and I was like, back tattoos, a big back tattoo on a man most of the time. Like, you know what? I don't know why, but that feels like a shield.
Yeah.
So now you're saying that, and I'm kind of like, okay. So like your back is your, you know, your weak side.
Yeah.
So if you put some power on there, that's like a shield for you.
Well, it's like,
And I don't have any tattoos. I'm just thinking of the tattoos too, like that
Yeah.
I would have gotten.
it's just,
Ideas I've had in the past and why I would have got them and how I observe them on others. But so back to the female back tattoo. You know, the way I think I interpret that is there's more of an archetypal like wanderer. You know, like naturalist, like somebody who is going to recede from the norms
you know, I always think
and
sorceress,
reflect.
you know?
Yeah, I
It's
think that's a
like,
good way to
you
put it.
know, it's got a sorceress and a warrior. You
Yeah.
know? It's like, I don't know. I think it's interesting to think about, like, at least for me, and I think about when I'm willing to have, you know, the wounding. It's like you've already been wounded. You've already been, you know, you've already surrendered, right? So it's like someone hits you in the back, you've already had the experience. So in some sense, you know, you're gonna have the ability to, like, you know, to respond to it instead of reacting. You know, and that is power. You know, there's some power in that for sure. The ability to respond to a situation instead of just reacting.
Dude, check this out. Okay, so we were talking about shoulder tattoos
Yeah,
earlier, you know?
yeah.
And what did you say you felt shoulder tattoos
I
carried?
felt like they carry sort of a almost an anarchist energy.
Okay, see, it's funny. Just the exact opposite thing almost pops into my head
Yeah,
because
yeah.
shoulder, you know, it's like
Yeah.
when you're a public servant, military official, like
Yeah.
that's where you carry a lot of your bling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's where you carry your like whatever your police department patch.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? I don't know. I'm just.
I know what you're saying.
And that's where you carry like your stripes as a military person, right?
Yeah, I think they do that. They also carry them on the pec too.
That's-
I think
yeah.
medals as well.
Right. Medals, and then there's.
Because you were talking about
There's some
honor.
sorta,
Well,
like-
you were talking about the pec, like a pec tattoo as being like honor.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
we
like right
associate
over
that with
the
honor.
but it's right over the heart.
But that's where you carry
which
your.
is the
That's where
same
you carry the
location that
medals.
you have the medals. Yeah.
Where you get like awarded something, which I thought that was cool. I don't know what if anarchist. I don't know where that. I don't know. I definitely think though that we were talking about, you know, face tattoos though, you know, and how those always have. I've always experienced those as being like aggressive.
You know,
sorta
like, man, we were talking about them earlier, but I feel like I can't even go into them. You know, just neck tattoos, like that's particularly
yeah.
what I like. Neck and face, and to me, neck and face just feels so countercultural.
Yeah,
Something about that,
for sure.
and something about the throat tattoo or neck tattoos. There's just some.
There's just no hiding, you know?
Yeah.
You're just not going to cover that up ever. And if you do cover it up, like, people know you're hiding something, you know? And it's just so in your face because it's on their face. It's
I think a good way I can describe without like offense or bias, like what I see in the neck tattoo
Yeah.
is the need to be heard. You know?
yeah, I like that.
Or and I think a part of the reason too why I have trouble with that interpreting him that way is, that's a need I have. You know, like the need to be heard. And so when it's just like out there in the open,
Yeah.
that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Or, yeah, maybe not even the need to be heard,
Maybe it's the
but
unwilling.
more so, I have a voice. That's a lot better way to put it. I feel like that's the energy.
I
It's
think,
like that throat chakra thing. I have a voice
yeah.
that will be heard, you know?
I think it's like, I kind of see it the same way. It's like the unwillingness to hide. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to put
Yeah.
this on my throat and my face, and it's like, I literally can't hide this. Like, if I put a mask on, you know somebody's behind the mask, right? You know, if I'm wearing like a turtleneck, you know, and you see ink poking out from under it, you know something's underneath there. You know, if I've got literally got tats on my face, it's like, I'm not going to hide the fact from you that I have tattoos. You know, I did this. You know, here it is. Here I am. Are you going to show up and are you going to see, you know, are you going to see me and see my tattoos? It's kind of rich. But yeah, I think it's countercultural, and it's interesting that you use the word countercultural, because I think that sort of points at like how much we do hide in this culture and how much shame we have over actually expressing what's actually going on behind all the armor. And maybe that's part of why I have felt so uncomfortable about like throat and face tattoos in the past. Which is like such an interesting way to think about this.
I'm not sure if I'm writing meaning onto experiences or if I'm interpreting my experiences.
Yeah, I
at
don't
this
know
point,
what's
right?
going on here. It's
But-
just interesting to think about it that way.
But digging further into the neck tattoo thing, I just feel like when you see somebody with a neck tattoo, the energy they give off is either a propensity to hide, you know, and kind of be like a little shifty, or like just a propensity to be loud, you know, and not in like a vocal way, but just in they have a loud presence.
I've also experienced it as like a very aggressive energy, but
I just want to say about that, but loud, what I'm thinking of is in a grounded way, in a balanced way. But, you know, this is all just like subjective, but it's really interesting.
no, yeah, I think loud's a better way to describe it. It's a very, I guess, in my face, you know, literally, you know, in my face. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of as aggressive. You know, it's, you know, maybe the dog's not angry, but it's, you know, it's barking, you know, and it's very excited, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that the people who have, you know, tattoos are dogs, but just kind of using the analogy, you know, the energy of like a very excited dog, you know, to try to get at the energy that I sort of experience, you know, where it can feel a little intimidating and a little off balancing for me personally.
All right, so locations. What other locations are there that carry energy?
I think I always think about like people who have sleeves, like a sleeve of tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be like a very creative energy about those people.
It's like the magician archetype.
Yeah, it's like they're like, you know, they're literally like bringing, you know, something into the world, and it's almost like that's just kind of like bursting out of their arms, you know, and their hands, you know, bring it into the world, but it's like just that energy like leading up to the hands, you know, it's just like pushing through their skin in like a weird way. You know, are they getting inked, or is the ink, you know, just something that overlays what's already there? I don't know.
Yeah, you're telling me about having this experience drawing.
Yeah.
Where you were drawing something, but is transcendent a bit.
Yeah, it feels like I'm not
Wasn't-
projecting onto the paper. It feels like I see the image on the paper and I'm just sort of like using a pencil to kind of try to approximate, or almost like it's an embossing, you know, of what's in the paper, you know, what's underneath. It's like, and I'm just kind of
Just like
like,
rubbing it with
Yeah.
a crayon or something to get
yeah,
what's underneath it out.
yeah, you know, and it's like, okay, you know, what's that about? It's interesting to think about.
Okay, So there's like 4 popular archetypes. What are they? There's magician, warrior, king, and what's the lover? That's what it is.
Oh,
Okay.
the lover. Huh. What does that mean? That's an interesting
That
one.
is an interesting one. I haven't really unpacked that too much. I just Googled what are the descriptions of these, and the lover archetype is just that side of emotion, experience, sensuality, so more of that kind of creative,
Yeah, it's like, I think intimacy and nurturing too, I think those kind of fit in with like the whole idea of being a lover.
So the first thing that pops up when I Google magician is magician archetype is associated with mystery, alchemy, and transformation. The magician is the thinker, a weaver, a creator of sacred space, a visionary, and an intuitive.
These are, now you got me in, now I'm intrigued. Now I want to like start reading about archetypes,
I mean, warrior and king, those are pretty easy masculine archetypes,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
the warrior is the one who's fighting for honor and just like in the pure sense, like fighting for a better world, and the king is the one who's fought and risen in personal awareness, and understands that there is a time to fight and isn't trying to fight everything.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, I should dive more into those archetypal energies because I like it. I like models,
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
a good model.
I think naming things, it's helpful. Helpful to have like names for our experiences.
The warrior's a really interesting archetype because I think when a lot of guys go deep, that's what gets woken up first. And that scares a lot of people because it's countercultural, it's wild when we're so civilized.
No, I agree.
But I think the shame of it is we're always like eschewing that energy, thinking that like that's just the energy that person wants to carry. But it's like, it's really a place that they need to go so that they can get to point B, because how can you be powerful? How can you be a powerful agent for anything if you can't feel your own power?
Yeah.
And when you can feel your own power, oh God, yeah. You want to get jacked on that, That feels good, when, oh, you ever had that experience when you're just clear-headed and you're like, oh man, it's just, you got that adrenaline, and you're gonna go like, tell your boss, not what you think and like cuss him out, but like you're just, I'm not gonna bullshit him anymore. I'm gonna share with him what I think because it's crucial, like for my existence, to exist as a whole entity, like in this ecosystem. That's an experience I've had. And yeah, oh, it was interesting. But it just feels good to be able to say what you think,
Yeah.
in a pure way.
For sure.
And not in a way that sends you into a rage and you're flying off the handle, but in a way that says, okay, I said what I need to say. I can move on in good conscience and in power because I have gotten that off of my plate, and you can come forward with me and we can work this out or.
Yeah, I think like what I'm hearing is like, and I resonate with this, it's like, I'm going to show up and yeah, and like be honest with people and be vulnerable. It's like I can't control the outcome. But it's not even about, trying to control the outcome because, when can we control the outcome? So, our job isn't to control the outcome, it's to show up, and that's scary.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also honest and authentic in the sense that, I'm being honest with myself about what I can and can't change, and I'm not trying to hide behind something that I'm projecting onto the other person. Like, I think they want to hear this, or I think they want to hear that. It's like, well, what do I need? Maybe I need to get paid a little more. Maybe I need to understand why I'm getting paid this instead of something else. Whatever it is. Maybe there's confrontation that has to take place, and that's never, it's never been comfortable for me. But I think it's always an opportunity to get better at confrontation. When I do show up and confront.
Right. But yeah, there we go. It's like, that's where I was going, is it?
Yeah, it's like that.
The warrior energy is a phase that you need to pass through. You need to feel your own power to be able to learn when to use it.
Yeah, I think it's part of like navigating like the fight or flight response that comes up. And I think for me, it's like realizing that, maybe that personality, that part of my brain, that has that personality, it's kind of like a wolf, it's a big guard dog. And yeah, when the dog barks, pay attention, But I think for me, it's like, maybe every time the dog barks, maybe I don't need to embody the dog. I need to look out through the curtains and see what's going on in the front yard. It's like, okay. Sometimes I need to embody the dog, but I think it's always better to go and, check and see what the barking is about before I turn into the werewolf,
I have this analogy. So, there's like some dogs that need a ton of exercise. Or they'll just like chew on your furniture. Maybe that's all dogs. Yeah. I'm not a dog person, so I don't really know. But this analogy of, I feel like a dog, if I don't get out and like get my exercise and kind of actualize in that way, it's like, I'm going to piss on the carpet. You know what I mean?
Gonna eat out of the trash can, Gonna shit in the corner.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm going to destroy other things if I'm not like feeling that strength pumping through my body.
Yeah.
Or be passive aggressive or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. Being human. It's a weirdest experience I've ever had. I'll let you know if I come across a weirder experience other than being human, but
I think that's enough rabbit trails for me.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for the chat.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was good.
There you have it, episode 27 in the bag. And it's good to be back. More episodes are coming your way very soon. And to stay up to date with the podcast, obviously subscribe to the show in your podcast app, but also hop over to Facebook and Instagram at The Grounded Presence. And if you want to be notified about new episodes by email, then also hop over to thegroundedpresence.com and subscribe to the mailing list there. That's it for now. I'll get back to the bi-weekly release schedule very soon. But for now, stay grounded out there, and I'll catch back up with you in a few weeks.